Good morning, holiday merrymakers. One more day until this year is over. Where does the time go? Right out the window. Day 6 of 7 of me trying to get used to mainstreaming, live streaming, and this is how I get comfortable here doing this. And it does get easier. It's not easy to learn it, but once you get a little routine going, which was the purpose of this, one of the purposes, then you got a routine going. So, what am I doing? Oh, yeah, all right. So let's get started here. We're done with all that. The intro and the music, we're done. Hello, everyone. I am Brian Kelly, a retired engineer and attorney with a background in design, construction, startup and testing, as well as legal issues within the energy engineering and construction industries. I also worked in surety and fidelity bonding, including white-collar matters similar to the Bernie Madoff case, like the one I had with Jeffrey Epstein's mentor. In addition to construction cases, his name was Hoffenberg, at large financial institutions like Citigroup and AIG. The details of my background can be found on the links page. There's a resume on there, but I'm retired. Along with I just put in the chat, you can find this stuff yourself, along with the page I am reading from right now. That's linked right in there. Everything is linked to that. The subject today, for the 6th time in a row, is my speech here that I wrote, and I would like to ad-lib upon it today for you. And I will have 7 of these in a row, ad-libs, in the can, for years and years and decades. I can refer back to that, because this is the base, this is the root document of this whole deal. And where it goes, nobody knows, but I think we're going to have some traffic coming our way in the coming years. Let's see. How many whistleblowers are we up to now? Oh, don't slip. Don't. Warp drive. Yeah, sure. So this is a concept of mine that is about 10 years old now. I am giving you a bare bones introduction today because, as you can see from the links page, I've got a lot to say and many different ways to say it. So this is just a brief and concise overview. You can read the detailed links and watch the videos posted there at your convenience. Now to the overall concept and general principles. Most importantly, I start with the assumption that light, big assumption here, the full spectrum is the best medium for us to use to cause an anti-gravity inertial mass reduction effect at this point here in reality. What year is it again? Oh yeah, that's tomorrow or the next day. And not space-time. That's a lot harder. Light is in space-time, but it is not space-time itself. I am not dealing with space-time, the vacuum, quantum foam, or anything like that you've heard over and over again for years. There's other easier ways. The relevant medium for this concept is also not air, and it is not water. And it is not even space itself, which is mostly just filled with light, but of course has other things in it. A few. But it's mostly just filled with light, isn't it? Terahertz, isn't it? Cold terahertz. Yep. Yes, it is. The way I see it. Did I read that? The way I see it, air, water, and space are not things that have light within them so much as they are things that are within light. So, a light only, and by that I mean the full spectrum, is the medium here. Now that's an assumption. You can use your own assumptions, do your own thing. In this medium, it's usable, doable now, see? Secondly, and very simply put, to achieve an anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effect within this medium, we will mimic the phases of matter. In other words, it already happens, which in turn are caused by energy levels, we know how, which are in turn caused by light. But we didn't really think of that part enough until now, did we? So, we can use light to move through light by pulling it through the skins and bodies of a massive object, which includes a little atom or a giant spaceship. It has mass, which will simultaneously cause the desired anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effects. There's much more to it, of course, but again, this is a bare bones overview. So, I can start with this falsifiable statement. One of the first things I dared to post on Twitter back in 2016, quote, "A light pumped through matter reduces the effect of gravity," unquote. That still holds true today, of course, as contradiction of that statement would effectively amount to nullifying the phases of matter, which may be possible, some oddball. There are exceptions to things, but not a big general exception, but I've never heard of it, not a big one. We can put forth such a general rule because we know that the phases of matter are caused by their energy levels. That is, light moving in, through, out, and around, commonly referred to as absorbed and emitted. I added around to those concepts, as an object or craft encased in a bubble of slippery light, including your car, including your airplanes, including your trucks to deliver expensive gas, etc., etc. Encased in a bubble of slippery light is going to provide us with mitigated friction, drag, and inertia in addition to the anti-gravity effect. We will be within things like air, water, and space, but always slightly separated and not interacting directly. This bubble notion is not unlike the warp drive bubble concepts, only because it's in a bubble. We're in a bubble up here, not way down there at 10 to the minus 35 meters. We're up here at 1 meter. That's 35 zeros of a difference there, okay? From here to light is only a billion. That's 9. 35 is a billion, trillion, quadrillion, octillion, quintillion, whatever it is. That's why I harp on this point. Feasibility. Now, I added around to those concepts as an object or craft on a bubble of slippery light. Okay, I did that. Not unlike, I got to the not unlike part and it set me off a little, didn't it? As some of you may have already surmised. Yeah, they're just different kind of bubbles. Big bubbles, little bubbles. These light bubbles can then be intensified, diminished, and shaped to facilitate relative motion with respect to other objects. That's what a hot air balloon does. So we will simply mimic, they use ballast, right? Simply mimic the as yet unfalsified natural phenomenon described as the phases of matter. That phenomenon also generally describes what buoyancy is and the lift of gases. Solids and liquids typically don't lift, despite being comprised of the very same atoms and molecules. We went over that. But gases do because of the light pumping in, throughout, and around the molecules and atoms. We will simply harness and scale this well-understood effect. Waveguides and the like can also be made to cause the same outcome, with the desired anti-gravity like floating and inertial mass reduction effects. We all see this phenomenon constantly, like when it's raining, like now. Okay, it's losing that mass. It's losing that light. When it gets cold, it's losing that flowing light that's holding that heavier than air water up in the sky, because now it's down in the yard, isn't it? Why? I already told you. I'll keep telling you too. And you know what? If it loses even more light, it'll turn into ice and lose its ability to be a liquid. And inertia will set even harder. And gravity will pull even harder. Simple. Obvious. Big, huge archetypes. We all see this phenomenon constantly, but for the most part don't appreciate it. It is easily observable in natural archetypes, such as when observing the differences between water ice, liquid water, and water clouds, as well as with man-made airships and balloons. Ever seen a balloon or an airship made out of frozen or liquid helium? No, you don't, because it doesn't work that way. It's got to have the light going through it. It's got to be a gas. You've got to expose it. You got to take it out of the refrigerator and put it outside. Then it goes up. Right? That's temperature at work. And probably to a lesser extent with butterflies, insects, and birds. A slightly more speculative sidetrack that I am avoiding today because I am only addressing the bare bones. To keep it short, sweet, and hopefully effective, I'm sticking to the mostly indisputable today. To debunk what I'm suggesting here, we'll take you straight back to the phases of matter themselves and how energy levels work, as well as things like basic buoyancy. Then one would have to explain away how the archetypes mentioned above exist somehow, in spite of the effect of energy levels, which are in turn caused by light. Then they would have to explain why these archetypes cannot be mimicked and improved upon drastically, especially given modern material sciences and optomechanical knowledge. And that's new, that's very new stuff, new field. If you haven't heard of it, you haven't heard of it, that's all. It's new. Certainly new since I was in college 100 years ago. But how long has optomechanics been around? In this sense, not devices like you screw the gear on your telescope. We're not talking about that kind. We're talking about light matter interaction. That's another word that's kind of got double meanings, and even in the world of science. Because that is precisely what I am now proposing. It took me a while to do it, but the arguments for this concept are now pretty much bulletproof. That's why I'm doing this 6-7 times. All in one place. Okay, come at this. This is the source document of this. Bulletproof. And new methods to improve upon these natural processes are flowing out of the science and engineering community. I forgot I had my headphones on. Every single day. Buoyancy, lift, and the phases of matter are material properties that human beings can certainly improve upon and optimize. There is absolutely no reason why they cannot be utilized more effectively and improved upon drastically. Yet this seemingly obvious endeavor has not been undertaken. This unfortunate state of things is also why the concept and the general principles I present to you today are not patentable or otherwise able to be monopolized. They belong to everybody. But what is done is one thing, and how it is done is quite another. So what I am saying is that the open source anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction process is right in your face. I am telling you, in the plainest language I can think of, exactly what that is. It is not a 0-point energy, but it is free energy. Everybody understands that word, right? Free stuff. A luxury, fully automated communism. Except, sane people call it post-scarcity, okay? This is how you start to get there. Pardon me, I need a sip after that hot air blew out. Where was I? But it is free energy. Yeah, it is. That's good. So I propose that we take this free energy, I mentioned that it was free, and perfect the light matter interaction in order to bend it to our will, as was done with fire. Remember that? And the motive power of heat in general. Carnot, everyone forgot him too. And which we can now extend to the entire spectrum. Does that sound impressive? It should sound impressive from anybody. It is time to move beyond that narrow band of infrared upon which we so heavily rely. Fire, explosions, combustion. That is what science and engineering are for. This is how human beings progress. Now, sometimes you got to take a step back. He's talking about balloons. We're on rockets. Yeah, but you kind of jumped ahead on that part and forgot the other part. You don't abandon just because you found something new, right? Well, sometimes that happens, but I think you know what I'm getting at here. We're talking about science. Science and innovation and the history of innovation. That is what science and engineering are for. This is how human beings progress. Take a risk, get out of your box that you think might be out of the box, but there's another box. Keep looking. And look backwards if you have to. That's what has to happen here. So, but to be fair, until I'm going into metamaterials now, but until it's possible to do these things, you can't have a metamaterial when you're in 1860. You don't have it yet. You don't even have an aerogel. But time marches on. So we have to keep track of things and how they might be useful. That's a problem with science, big time. And also forgetting the old lessons we've learned, and then sticking to the surface level of things. That's just buoyancy. Well, what's just buoyancy? It's just buoyancy. It's just. Well, dig deeper. So this is where the metamaterials come in. For example, the lift of the random hydrogen gas molecules in, say, the Hindenburg, every single one functioning haphazardly and working against each other, could be ordered and purposed and vectored right down to the angstrom level. That is, optimized with metamaterials, molecular and atomic approaches, waveguides, aerogels, photonic crystals, topological insulators, plasmonics, quasi-crystals, sub-wavelength waveguides, and maybe even some mythological, magical isotope tweaking will all likely work. But these metamaterial design and fabrication efforts must be working toward a feasible, intelligible, indisputable, unfalsified general principle. You want to get something done in this lifetime? And light pumping is indeed such a principle. If we also happen to bend space-time or warp the vacuum by accident along the way to this idiot-proof sure thing, then so be it. You can still use this. Stranger things have happened. But in the meantime, we are going to use those metamaterials and waveguides to capture and transfer the explosive momentum of ambient mass equivalent light. That's free. You can call it a continuous radiation pressure, or even thrust from reloadable fuel until you get comfortable with the idea, but just keep on thinking about those angstrom-sized atoms, or sub-wavelength waveguides, capturing and exploding photons, thousands of times larger than they are, in the nanometers, and we know they work, and we can see it with our own two eyes, and how fast they can be made to do so. Fast. Also, internalize and understand the fact. Listen up. This is a talking point. You got to write this one down, maybe. Okay? Also, please, for me, try. Internalize and understand the fact. It's a fact. Well, you have to accept my premise, but it's not a bad premise. Seeing as space is full of light, air is full of light, water is full of light, planetary atmosphere is full of light, whatever, a lot of stuff's all full of light. Not solid stuff, though. That's beyond the scope of this. That's your warp drive, beyond me. Until you get comfortable with the idea, but just keep on thinking about those angstrom-sized atoms or sub-wavelength waveguides, capturing and exploding photons thousands of times larger than they are in the nanometers, and how fast it can be made to do so. Oh, I did that. Also internalize and understand the fact that the very medium you will be pumping through. I mean, this is like functionality upon layers of utility, usefulness, purpose, and design. You can ignore it or you can use it. Okay? No one cares. It's your decision. Also, yes. Well, okay. Again, also internalize and understand the fact that the very medium you will be pumping through is also a highly efficient propellant when used correctly. Did you hear me back there, Skunkworks? Tap, 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 tap. Or shall I repeat that? I think you heard me by now. Pardon me. Hot air blowback. Conservation of hot air. Did you? Anyway, this is how you do propellantless. That's what you want. That's what you got. At least for the time being. Okay. Did I get to the part where I never saw any aliens? Or I have no real firm belief on all this. I tend to believe these stories. But if these are advanced civilizations, do you think they figured that out yet? Something that easy? Okay. We are talking about angstrom-sized nanopumps and picometer waveguide systems that are hardwired by nature to run and keep running at attosecond light speeds and higher. That's 18 zeros per second every second since the Big Bang. It is not quite perpetual motion, but those numbers will work out fine for most of us. Per square inch, those angstroms are in the quadrillions by area and the quintillions by volume, or thereabouts. That is 15 more zeros, working with those 18 zero attoseconds in an already lighter than air metamaterial, such as graphene, which is simply hydrogenated graphene, which is simply graphene soaked in hydrogen. These materials can fuse those nanopumps into a solid chunk of the skin, automatically refueling nanorockets in the octillions, all acting as one. This kind of design will start to approach optimal energy densities, which will then be compounded with femtosecond and attosecond time scales to produce paradigm-shifting efficiency. You want that, right? Paradigm-shifting efficiency, is that what you want? Things like that will give you a radiant flux per mass density in abundance, petajoules and zetawatts, and are becoming achievable here and now. There are many, many ways to look at this concept, mostly all describing the same thing, from Newton and forces to Einstein's description of the mass equivalence of light, to floating iridescent hummingbirds and butterflies, to tales of the UAPs themselves, these football field-sized things floating over your head. Is that what happened? Maybe it happened like this. You think? That is why there is a link to the link above, and why this presentation has to be short and sweet and packed with things like falsifiable but unfalsified statements and indisputable statements and mind-numbingly large, small, and fast numbers. Until people get the general idea of what I am talking about. Do you see the light? What do you think they're floating in and on? Then we can get into all the subtleties, which certainly do exist. That's for other people later, mostly, but are not dispositive of the overall undeniable efficacy here. That's my job. So basically, I am all but telling you the way it is, not suggesting it. Nature is what it is. That's the way it is. And it has been here the whole time. The science is already there, going back to at least the Greeks anyway, and almost certainly further. You think a caveman didn't notice some of this stuff? You throw water on the fire, it turns into air. 50,000 years later, Aristotle wrote it down. The math seems to be lagging right now, though, just as it was for the Montgolfier brothers, the Wright brothers, and the early Chinese rocket scientists. As with them, the equations will have to play catch up here as usual. Sometimes we lose sight of the fact that physical concepts and ideas exist independently of the many eccentric ways to explain them. That said, I will go on to suggest, I hope I didn't offend any mathematicians that spend too much time on this writing stuff down and not enough time thinking about the real world. Just because it's written down doesn't mean you can change it magically. Because if you did change it magically, then you could, do all kinds of stuff. All right? But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. That said, I will go on to suggest that equations around supergravitating bubbles and fluids with invariable gravitational fields might be one way to describe this. That's not too far out at all. Or it might be done with optomechanical force studies for light matter interactions in a gravitational field. That's not far out at all. But right now, there is not even a consensus on photon mass for thrust, despite photons being the drivers of most of it, or barely even the notion of fields of light in air or water, where the force of gravity within is diminished, like this little tic-tac, that I have ever seen. Nor have I ever seen I have it memorized, but I'm lazy. Nor have I ever seen a model for a point of mass deterministically controlling its own light bubble in a gravitational field, which is what this guy's doing here. Okay, pretend you can do it, write it down as an equation, because you can do it. In a gravitational field, perhaps something like that exists, or should exist, for supercavitating hypersonics and submarines, but I doubt it. Is such a region of curved space less curved in that instance? Does it matter? Does it matter to build the thing? No, not now. But it would be nice to know. Are the tensors and cones any different under such conditions? Are the angels and pins dancing properly? Are the gravitons no longer as coherently aligned? That's not too far out, and some of you know it isn't. Because you know that a gravitational wave is just a thing going through gravitons. You know it you see it when you look out your window. I happen to think so. But that is inconsequential. Because I don't think anyone has ever thought about some of these things mathematically. Why would they? But again, right now, as far as I am concerned, that is their problem, not ours. I don't know why this scenario isn't already on paper and barely care right now. I am here to float away at will, like this guy in a tic-tac, and shoot off at the speed of light in my own cozy little light bubble. That's a bubble they're in, a light bubble, using the absolutely obvious characteristics of nature. Okay? How that is documented later is of secondary importance, but despite my apparent hubris, I will be glad to help with the bookkeeping. Please just spell my name correctly with a Y. Footnote 1. I would also like to ask somebody more mathematically proficient than myself to explain how the mass of a light entangling, and by entangling I mean in the plain meaning of the word, not the spooky action meaning. No, Alice and Bob, no. You're confusing the issues. We're not at the quantum level here. Nah, we're at the level we can work at. Easily, and already do, and nature shows us every day. Spooky action, not at that, not that, we're not down there. We're not in that mode. Other people are there, not me. How the mass of a light entangling object over time, losing its mass equivalence at a rate greater than a local gravitational field's acceleration require, which is what a flippin' balloon does, what a water cloud does, what a blimp does, the Goodyear blimp at the football game, is losing its mass equivalence at a rate greater than a local gravitational field's acceleration requires. Okay, that's what it's doing. May be likened to a snapshot of negative mass. Now, people look at the Goodyear balloon and they'll say, that's negative mass. Ooh, that can't exist. No, they're looking right at it and, they know it's a balloon. And that's what it does. It needs light. If that blimp was in the freezer somewhere and it was cold enough, or if it was out in space and that stuff stops being a gas and starts turning into a liquid, that's a good question. I think that happens around 200. I'm out of my league here now without Google. But yeah, if it goes up high enough, the gas will freeze. It turns into a liquid, then it turns into ice. And it's not going to pump light like it does here in the atmosphere. And it makes it look like a snapshot of negative mass. I would tend to think there might be some math already done out there by now. I wonder. Or perhaps we can update the rocket equation. Don't get me started. I guess you can get yourself started. Update the rocket equation. And enough with the 16 dimensions and shit. Pardon me. Shame on me. Put a quarter in my own jar or something. Enough of that stuff. And when you don't have a photon mass, all right. And give it to the rocket equation guys when you're done with it. Okay? When you figure that out, take it over there and give it to them. Make it so we can update the rocket equation, make it continuous. Put the rocket in a mitigated gravitational field of its own making. That's the light bubble, see? And wrap a slippery light bubble around it. Repetition there, see? That bubble around there is going to be changing the gravitational field, isn't it? And diminishing the effect of inertia, especially if it's a spin-through graviton. Man, that's easy when you see that. If that. Wrap a slippery light bubble around it. You can call that a field of diminished gravity because there's no air in there. And those photons are pinging these gravitons. Ping. You have a nice straight line of gravitons holding you down in gravitational field. Because there's mass there. Along comes a unexpected cloud of light. Because gravity affects light, as we saw with Albert Einstein and Eddington and them guys. Light must also affect gravity. That's how causation works, okay? So it's going to scramble it somewhat. Be nice to have some math on that too, right? That's Wayne Ojala's Nobel Prize. I would tend... Where was I? Oh, the rocket equation. Gosh, good Lord. One more day. Wrap a slippery light bubble around it to reduce drag, friction, and inertial mass. How do we rewrite F equals ma? For a body in motion when a major component of that body is not mass, but mass equivalence. Get over it. Uncling, unclench. Get out of the box. Then get out of the other box that you think you're going into. But there's another one right behind you, under you. The thing with this is, this concept can be described 6 ways to Sunday and back. But apparently, since that hasn't been done conclusively to date, this novel concept, which is simply mimicking what already exists in nature, we'll have to bring that about. Pardon me, I need a drink of water here. Coffee. So yes, the current lack of comprehensive mathematical descriptions is a weakness here. But that is not an obstacle, merely a historical footnote. Okay? Because the phases stand unfalsified and archetypes exist, and you don't need an equation to do that. Figure that out. And you don't need a PhD in physics. The notion of optimization, which would involve the engineering of metamaterials in this case, that's my undergraduate background, taking a system and improving it. All right? The notion, otherwise, I don't want to get into that. That's have proven worthwhile over and over again throughout history. And this concept is fresh, fertile ground. You can see all that with your own eyes, whether you appreciate it yet or not. It is what it is and stuff. That the math is once again lagging. Innovation is merely a secondary concern. It often does, not always, but often. Fortunately, that gives other people something to do that aren't me. One upside to this weakness is, it will also cause people to realize that although this concept has yet to be described mathematically to everyone's satisfaction, including my own, it is also impossible to debunk. Mathematically or any which way. Unless you get into your 2 + 2 is 5, which I know some of you like. Because nature is what it is, no matter what has or has not been written or published about it. publish it later. I told you how to spell my name. And while sufficient archetypes already exist, this concept is indeed testable as well. I started experimenting with balloons and mirrors. And early on, and did it for years. But for this crowd, a basic metamaterial might be necessary, starting with perhaps a homemade street corner bootleg graphene or equivalent. Think of it this way, all you will be doing is taking something lighter than air, like graphene, and making it even lighter than air by adding hydrogen to it for a hydrogenated graphene, known as graphene. Then you gradually learn to control its inertia mitigating anti-gravity properties. You dope it to turn left. You decorate it to turn right. Whatever it takes. Then you start building around it. First, you have to have a general principle that works. Instead of a mirror deterministically reflecting the sun onto a balloon. And is observable and testable. Unfalsifiable. Intelligible. Maybe Mark Sokol chasing a piece of street graphene through the back alleys of North Jersey with Jeremiah's magic wand, or it could be Joshua Bertrand with his aerogels and vacuum airships, which may or may not already being used by the Chinese spy balloon types. And I understand the foils are all shot down like a Chinese graphene pumped cylinder grayish balloon-like thing, using your own internet to spy on you, chumps. Or it could be Wayne Ojala, who previously mentioned. Fail forward research on YouTube and Twitter. Or as I suggested, to certain well-known TTSA members repeatedly on Twitter years ago, put the material in a chamber. You say you found a broken piece of a flying saucer and you think I might float? What do you do with it? Give it to the army? Or do you go to your buddy Bigelow? Oh yeah, who has a cold chamber and all kind of chambers to test aerospace stuff for outer space, which was the business he was in for a while, or aspired to, or something. And let him do it. And, well, that's water over the dam, isn't it? But I took a shot. It's on Twitter. Look it up. Put the material in a chamber and just fiddle around. NASA had them too, Fiddle around. I know you've done it by now, haven't you? But you won't say you saw it with your own eyes. Did you? Didn't you? Did you? You saw it on a video, didn't you? In a chamber. And just fiddle around with the different electromagnetic fields, didn't you? The electric field, which is going to control it maybe. What light it's going to let through, right? Electric goes this way, magnetic that way. You juice it up a little bit. It goes up and down depending on how cold and hot it is. Simple concepts. The electric field, the magnetic field. Juice it up. The electromagnetic fields known as light. Those are three different things. The electromagnetic fields known as light. And if you're spraying that around you on your spaceship, you're affecting the field around you, aren't you? You're diminishing it, the gravity there, and the mitigating it. I can't believe I didn't put that word in this thing. One of my favorite words when it comes to this, and I forgot it. All that hot air. Anyway, mitigate it. And just fiddle around with the temperatures. Terahertz is the temperature. Did I mention that? Visible light, microwaves, x-rays, radio waves, sound, or whatever frequencies you have handy to see what affects and controls it. Ultimately, we will build around these malleable material properties of lift and buoyancy, which are caused by light. I know that's a big revelation to some people. And optimize them until we are pumping light at a rate approaching the speed of light. It may seem very silly and funny for a while with a magic wand, like it was for me in the balloons, but ultimately this cannot not work. Unless you're going to disprove buoyancy somehow and say it can't be improved upon. Is that your argument? Is that your argument? But I realize, ultimately this cannot not work. Raytheon, DOE, SpaceX. This is the future here. You understand me? Ultimately, this cannot not work. True. He's not wrong there, is he? Is he? No. At some point, it is just simple common sense. But I realize and acknowledge that a few performative hoops may be desirable here, like this. But no, it is not as awe-inspiring as warp drive. You're not going to go across the universe by ripping at the space and time of the Planck lengths. That's not happening here. This is a jacked up balloon on steroids. Extreme steroids. But bulletproof and idiot-proof. Best I can do for you. So, take a quick look later at what I call the Philly Flyer, linked right here on the page, for an idea of what that might look like at first, maybe before we get the magic wand out. Something along these lines might inspire the experimentalists. But we can talk about all that stuff later. This is a bare bones overview, and is not intended to be a deep dive into waveguide and metamaterial technology. Many ways to skin that cat. Okay, getting away from the prototypes, and back to the archetypes. I would expound for just a moment on the UAPs and UFOs themselves. I have personally never seen one. No. But we have all heard the stories, and people familiar to us all, and some of you have seen them, and claim to have seen the compelling data. Very compelling, this data. I tend to generally believe these accounts because they describe multispectral signatures. Is that Marvin the Martian? I think it is. And light pumping behavior. That was me saying that. That is precisely as I would expect them to be, with the so-called glowing auras of cold light. To me, the 5 observables should be called the 5 utterly predictables. Aren't I clever? I have a webpage on precisely that topic, in fact, and that tells you how you were saying there was no signatures, but now you're saying they're multispectral. A good development. Should I pat myself on the back? Man, I hate self-promotion, but it's got to be done, doesn't it? I have a webpage on precisely that topic, in fact, but since we are bare bones today, and there's a huge distraction, I will say nothing further about it now. You can find that link later and read it to see why I occasionally cannot help but scoff at Arrow and ATIP and TTSA scoff, and all the infotainment limited hangouts, slow roller types, slip up. Because you know it. I know you know it. But doing so far more efficiently. Oh, wait a minute. Did I say that? No, I didn't. The UAPs are, in all likelihood, pumping the full spectrum of light within a medium of light. That's what it is. Well, it can be. There are other mediums, I agree. All right? It's not the... It's a pretty big one, though, right? Everything else is in it except space-time, which is probably a Planck-length little gizmo that a graviton spins on. You gonna rip those apart? like a routinely. I mean, look what it took to get to the Higgs particle, so-called Higgs particle. You're going to have to go deeper than that, my friends. I don't expect anybody listening right now to buy that line wholesale, but I'm starting to expect it because the people are going to expect it. Especially if some uncontrolled, what's it called? Uncontrolled, catastrophic, a catastrophe disclosure happens. Maybe it will. Maybe 88 whistleblowers will say Kelly was right. Well, I'll settle for one, because they might be doing something else. It is possible, but I would say this is a likelihood that we're someday going to run into somebody doing this, because we're going to be doing it too. I can't help that. I can't stop that. You can't stop it. Anyone, if I can see it, somebody else can. Okay? So, make a note of that. I don't expect anybody listening right now to buy that line wholesale. But at some point, I predict that all of you will see this stuff could not be more obvious. Those of you watching 10 years from now. How funny is that? That a guy had to yell about this stuff. Pardon me, I need a drink here. As for inertia, inertia means very little. Very, very little. When your craft surfaces are not directly touching atmospheres, be they gaseous or liquid, but are instead encased in a nice, slippery light bubble. There's a bit more to it, in my opinion, but that gets into spin 2 gravitons and why spin 1 photons cut right through them. I think that was yesterday. I went into a little detail there, which is the kind of thing I am skipping in this bare bones overview. Oh yeah, I said doggy paddle when I meant treading water. Treading water, that's what mass does, because it's going in ways contradictory to itself, basically. Simplifying it for an average person, which is how I think of it and how I remember it and all that. But it has to be put in terms of spins and things, gravitons and photons, which is what it is, It comes to you in one, roughly the same way. Whereas a spin 1 photon compared to a treading water mass, even the lightest mass, is a little too, it's got too much going on there, see? A photon's going like this. It's a difference between this and this. The Australian crawl. Imagine my legs kicking. I'm going right through that water. You're mass. You're over there doing this. Treading water. Look at my little proton going around itself. It's a 3 and a 4, whatever it is. It's just too much. It's just too much. But light's whipping right through it. So when you put that mass treading in place, and here comes a giant photon in the same pool, it's 1,000 times larger, and it's bashing the water in the pool. Boom, boom. You might just float over that way a little bit. I just thought of that just now. So don't hold me to that part. But the treading water versus the Australian crawl, yeah, I mean that's what you're doing here. And then you're throwing those waves out there. They call that field propulsion, field. I call it mitigation, but in other words, you're adjusting it. You're adjusting it. In space, no. Similarly, a gravity means little to nothing to mass. When the mass is losing mass equivalent at a rate greater than the local gravitational field's acceleration requires. In other words, it's losing its own weight quicker than the 32 feet per second thing. Okay? Now you have to do a little math to figure that out, but I don't think I'd like to see it done. Let's put it that way. I can see it in my mind's eye, flipping right up the gravity Here's a gravity down. This is flipping up, jumping up over that. Boop, boop, boop. And the gravity gets denser down here, right? So you start out that way. Boop, 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 boop. In space, similarly, I got carried away with myself, which is the purpose of this stuff. Get it out there. Okay. In space, you would just aim the thing at the nearest star. That's your energy source, right? Going that way anyway, right? It's propellantless, right? You want that, right? It's free. Free, too. I tell you that. Maybe you want to go right toward that thing, like I'm pointing toward my camera there. And then you're getting all that light and momentum. Boom, you're pumping it through there, and you're going almost the speed of light. And then you whip around the thing, the sun or whatever it is, and you throw on the parking brake and slam it in neutral, or something like that. You optical mechanics types configured, or gravitational mechanics. You rocket guys. You're going to have a blast with this. You just got to take your equations, turn them inside out a little bit. You whip around the sun, then you slam it into fourth. And it's spewing light out the back like, oh, mua, 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 mua. Something like that. So you're just aiming the thing at the nearest star, pulling it out, pumping it back out at a rate approaching the speed of light. The craft will be pulling and pumping light in, through, out, and around. That's pretty memorable, right? I like that. While maintaining its own little protective and slippery, everyone knows what slippery bubbles are. Slippery, because it's slipping right through there. Why? We discussed that yesterday. Because there's no friction between light and, well, here's the craft surface. Here's a bubble of slippery light. And up here's the air. And air's huge compared to the pieces on the surface, right? The little atoms. The air molecules are big compared to that. And the light photons are 1,000 times bigger than where they're headed into, and they just get sucked right in there. Right? And then they explode out the back. Well, you wave guide them through there, you do a few tricks. But that's all it is. That's simple. And nature does that on its own. You can see that with hydrogen. You can see that with water. You can see that. You see that with water. This water out here is going to evaporate. Okay, that's what happens. That's where it went. There's a bit. Now I am really lost. I am skipping. In space, you would just aim the thing. The craft will be pulling and pumping light. I got $10 that says that is what most of these alleged UFOs and so-called unidentified anomalous phenomena are doing. Most, maybe some. I'm saying most right now, though, but of course I would, because I'm throwing $10 down, pal. Are doing, but we will just have to wait and see. One of you guys will slip up. Just slip up. That's all you have to do. Doesn't matter. We know it anyway. So the bottom line here is, should I take a sip? Yeah, take a little sip here for the hot air fest. Okay. So, enough histrionics. So the bottom line here is that this stuff is actually simple and idiot-proof. It boils down to a recognition of the need to optimize an analog of the phases of matter for a certain purpose, commonly called buoyancy, or perhaps now, ironic air quotes, anti-gravity. And light pumping. Can we settle on that? Light pumping, light bubbles. It's kind of easy for an average person to understand, to visualize it. And that's what it is. Human beings have been changing material properties since before the cave was invented, so why stop now? This milestone, anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction, is one that we have not yet fully addressed with even the most basic tools. and easiest concepts at our disposal, but only with notions that, while ambitious, are not yet feasible. Nothing wrong with dreaming, folks. So let's just admit that much. Get over the embarrassment of letting the accomplishments of the Montgolfier brothers and their progenitors languish, and get on with it. Building around the inertial and mitigation properties of the light-matter interaction is a natural step. It just got waylaid for a while in favor of force and thrust. Come on, anyone could do that, make a mistake. Not a mistake, but it's what happened. Instead of using brute force explosions to overcome gravity, we will use the benefit of higher energy levels to free ourselves from gravity and inertia in a more subtle, elegant, and effective manner. Because you don't have to reload fuel, do you? Be nice if you didn't have to go to the gas station all the time. For fuel, that takes time and money. This approach involves harnessing and using ambient energy in real time, and it's not unlike solar power in that respect. So that concept is out there. It's sunk in to the population understands that part about the free energy from the sun. Okay? So this isn't new that way. Okay? Is that propellantless electricity? Yeah. It's kind of, I got to think of a way to twist that around maybe. But the point is, and that as I've said before, I am a nuclear proponent mainly. I have nothing against coal-burning Mercedes-Benzes either. But solar power is going to improve and improve and improve and improve until it can run at night. It doesn't have to use visible light anymore. It can use terahertz temperatures wherever you go. Wherever there is some material somewhere that will push an electron through it, like they're doing with the solar panels, for any photon. Okay? I might put another $10 down on that, if you don't believe that. You have to make it, don't you? You have to think it up, then make it. It'll be a while for that, but we're off. Make no mistake. This is the hard tech play of the century. Waiting to happen, folks, if I do say so myself. And I just did, and I won't even mention the green energy aspect of it because that'll be forgotten shortly. Because I shouldn't have to. I may sound a little underwhelmed about this sometimes, but I'm fully aware of those facts. And just a little bit fatigued by them. The free energy is all around us. It's there when you look out your window. Cringe. When you go to church. When you pay your taxes. I can't resist it. I thought I'd only do it a couple times, but I can't get past it. The free energy is all around us. And you need to wake up like Neo woke up, right? The free energy is all around us in every photon, right down to the visible light and temperature in the environment wherever you may be enjoying this presentation. And your Wi-Fi. And your, what else? Radio waves coming through there. And your, I don't know if they broadcast television anymore. But, anything, any waves coming through here, sound, all those other ones. So if you want is your microwave on? It's a little leaky. You could use that too. So if you want anti-gravity, And this includes the entire terahertz spectrum, by the way, which is another distraction I'll save for later. But all that is a temperature range found everywhere in the universe between negative 459 and positive 334 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why they make things that float in it. So if you want anti-gravity, inertial mass reduction, and free energy, first realize you were in fact sitting in it. I am here to tell you how to capture it and use it. Well, you can use it your own way, but this is one way. I better take a sip. Man, I thought I wouldn't have any energy today. To quote myself, if I may, quote, large numbers of little things doing little things quickly and repeatedly add up to very big things. Quadrillions, octillion. In this case, the underappreciated scales in numbers in nature are far more relevant to solving this problem than our equations, at least for right now. Get busy on those equations. And we will be using time as a tool here. Ever think of that? Letting things just do what they do naturally at the very high speeds they do them at. I'm going to quote myself, too, a little bit. Oh, yeah. You use more of the fourth dimension. When you use more of the fourth dimension, time, you can use less of the three dimensions. Energy density over time. But when you think about it, if you keep exploding quickly, that adds up this way, just like 3D adds up this way, but now we're getting too close to space-time, and this is not space-time. If you can write an equation to fit it into general relativity or gauge theory or what, any of that stuff, go ahead and do it. I welcome it because it can be described that way, right? Yeah, because if the light affects gravity, as I argued, where was I going with that? It's going to, gravity's sitting on the vacuum, right? Is that the smallest thing? No, but, it's sitting on, in my opinion, the Planck lengths, which is the actual fabric, and I'm not the only one that's saying this. This is the superforce idea, I think. Planck length, right? That's your brick wall. If you can cut through that, then you have warp drive. So we roughly agree that that's the bottom line, is that Planck. But if you're affecting the light's affecting the graviton's affecting the Planck by sitting there and spinning on it. You can make that argument. Maybe an equation is out there someday that'll say that. Well, anyway, that's out of my league. But this is in my league. Now you're going to hear what my league is. I'd pound the table, but I'd break something here. And it's pointless. I hurt my hand. When you set things up to do what they would be doing anyway, but so that they are doing them optimally for a purpose, that is how words like propellantless and perpetual motion leave the fiction and fantasy realm to become real life. Sure, I read all those books when I was a kid, those sci-fi books, same ones you did, a lot of you. Going back to the 70s. That's how old I am. I'm 66. There are zeros upon zeros of bulletproof, idiot-proof, octo-quadrillion, zepto-quintillions just sitting out there waiting to be used. That's your propellantless. Those tiny little things in such large numbers and at such high speeds and at such small spaces compound and add up. As anyone who has ever worked around nuclear energy, as I have, or seen Oppenheimer twice in the theater, Man, that was cool when that bomb blew up. I think about it every time I read this. I saw it in the 3D IMAX or whatever it is. And then I saw it again when the power went out. I'm glad I did too. See it twice. If you liked it once, you'll love it twice. As I have seen that twice, can tell you. That's one you really want to be in the theater for. Plus, it gives you the full effect of the annoying Feynman bongo drums. It's like, what the hell is that? No. So there is no excuse. This is shaming. So there is no excuse, you bums. Why inertial mass reduction cannot be achieved starting now with us. The technologies are already out there. But they are unguided, unpurposed, ignored, forgotten, and or underpurposed. I am here to get the ball rolling in the right direction by first focusing people. Focus people. Unintelligible, feasible, and achievable concepts, and then developing them. Well, if you read it 100 times, you'd ham it up too. I start hearing it in other people's voices. When you are stuck. Okay. Yeah, this is where we switch gears. But maybe you should just go and not tell people you're switching gears. But this is life advice for the holiday season, for everybody having difficult situations, which, do crop up a little more sometimes, like this time of year. So, when you're having difficult situations, and I hope you're not, so that you have to repeatedly reframe a problem, and it seems to be going nowhere. Sometimes you will stumble upon a much easier solution than the ones you've been trying over and over and over, again to no avail. Sometimes it can be shockingly simple. As anyone who has ever tried unplugging it and then plugging it back in can attest. This is one of those times, innovation world, development of history of aerospace. Unplug it and plug it back in. This is one of those times. Normally I would call myself a simpleton here and joke about how it takes a simpleton to find the simplest solution. But not this time. Instead, once again, I will assert that this light-pumping concept is the way to go now, to make the most progress in the least time with the knowledge and resources we already have. People should keep working on the warp drives, gravity generation, and quantum inertia, and whatever else. But again, I would assert that this almost mindless, overlooked simplicity is undoubtedly the best path to pursue vigorously. And that is just the base reality for now. And it can only succeed, period. This outcome will happen eventually anyway, with or without us here and now. But why not us and why not now? You got anything better to do? At the risk of sounding defensive, the logic behind this concept cannot be seriously questioned. With the physics and science, with the physics and energy levels and phases, and the physics is already there and anyone can see it. With the energy levels and phases, it is what it is. In this case, it really is too, huh? So you can either accept that and start working toward the future or not. The math is mostly there and things become pretty obvious when considering the undeniable effectiveness and the possibilities of cascading scales of time and photonic momentum. This reality is almost indisputable. Despite the fact that the concept is perhaps lacking its best and most concise description with mathematical symbols. Perhaps, ironically, the engineering and fabrication technologies are both further along in those aspects because there are people unknowingly doing bits and pieces of this work all around the world right now in academic laboratories and fledgling industries. The basic materials for a lot of this are already out there, but their use has not been correctly purposed, let alone optimized. It is up to us, like, share, subscribe. And us in this tinfoil hat affinity group to start to make that happen. In closing, I realize that I may not have explained this to everyone's liking as yet, and that is understandable. On the other hand, there is very little chance that this notion can fail. That's an upside. See, that one way or another, it'll happen eventually anyway, even if it is only a step toward bigger and better things. Next stop, dark energy. I see you there, and I see what I don't see there, most importantly. So now it is your turn out there. I will gladly take questions now, or anytime on X, formerly known as Twitter, or in my YouTube and Rumble channel comments, where other people might benefit from our interaction. Additionally, I plan on doing more shows like this. I'm going to start my own, I'm going to go at least once a week live, this time of day. Probably comments on tweets and scientific developments. I saw a few this morning. I could just talk about those, because it all adds up. Additionally, I plan on doing more shows like this. I said that. Until all of this becomes painfully obvious. It already is painfully obvious. After 10 years, I consistently bore myself by thinking about this too much. I can only go so many hours a day, as it can get repetitive and tedious. But it's a tired statement, but true. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Right? But I rarely get tired of discussing it. I got other stuff to do too. And the future is wide open. In the meantime, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Jeremy, Tim, Bernie, your name here. I'm ready for questions, if there are any. And then I will outro out and all that stuff like I learned how to do this week. So let us do it. Let's see if there are any questions. Well, let's put me on screen first. Oh, I am on screen. Of course I am. That was the point. I did that right. It's easy, but you know, it's also easy to get backward. One of those kind of things. So I already am on screen. So let us check over here. Okay, some nice comments here from Josh Bertrand. The multispectral link. Okay, a few nice comments from our friend Josh Bertrand, the guy who made aerogels, brought that back out into the popular discourse of UFO Twitter, because that's what these Chinese balloons and spy gizmos could be. Any reason why they aren't? Yeah, I mean, come on, right, Patterson? Jeez. Well, you got that's a next step. Wouldn't you like a low Earth orbiting satellite? I think you would. I think it's a low energy. It's a jacked up balloon, okay? It's got aerogel in it, stuffed in a vacuum or something. Well, no, wrapped around it. You take your radio charger gizmo from your satellite and you heat up this side and it turns left. Then you shine a little microwave at it or something. It turns right and it goes over China. They don't even see it because it's coming in low. What's that song, Coming In Low? That's an REM song I'm thinking of. Coming in low. Not fast, but low. And anyway, thanks for the compliment on the jacket. Yeah. Century 21 in New York City. Try it out, folks. They take the designer stuff they couldn't sell, or as I like to tell people, yeah, David Bowie wore this on the catwalk once. Then they take it over to the bin at Century 21, and it's a $1,500 thing marked down to $99.99, $50. So I guess No questions, just a comment. And we gave him a shout out, which he deserves. And you'll be seeing him again. And, well, let's see. Yeah, when I figure out how to get guests on here, which I don't know, you got to get Zoom and then broadcast the Zoom. Which I think, I can see I could possibly do that. But I'm a boomer, so it's one step at a time with this stuff. All right, I think that's our question there. Let's check Twitter and see if we got any comments of note. Well, we got a private message, so I'm not going to flash that on the screen. But I have a feeling it's Josh saying check your email, check your thing. So that's it for today. So we will get out. So to do that, we do our outro. Okay? You go over here to the secret screen you can't see now, because I've learned how to do that right. And we get rid of me. And we put on the desk only. And then we show some pictures. And then, well, first we go to the, turn on the music. Free YouTube music, folks. It took me a while to find this. See, it takes a while to figure this out. It's like, well, I want a little music, but I don't want to violate any copyright laws. How do I do that without paying for a license, which I will do if I know how to do that, but it's hard to even find that. And then I stumbled upon this. And it does have some nice Christmas music for us and holiday jingles and Happy New Year's and Hanukkahs to us all. So let's hit it. And leave. But we don't want to look at that, do we? That's boring. I can't figure out how to hide that. That would be nice. Light pumping. One more, folks. One more tomorrow and down with America. You'll be a moderator now, Josh, as soon as this is over. One more song. Buoyancy.